Welcome to the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show, a broadcast service of globalbusinessnews.net.
Now, here's your host, Ed Cohen.
Hi, this is Ed Cohen, your host on Global TV Talk Show, a unit of globalbusinessnews.net. And this is program number something like 399 since we began this series in spring of 2020. And we're really happy to welcome back Stephen Howard in Mexico City and Shelly Tagelski in Lake Tahoe. Lucky person you. Stephen.
Thank you, Ed. And this is our Thrive XL show. So Thrive is where we want leaders to learn how to set up workplace wellness, talk about employee well-being, mental health issues, tackling burnout, but mostly create a workplace wellness. And we are delighted to have a brilliant writer, a lovely book called Sit Down to Rise Up from Shelly Tagelski. And welcome, Shelly. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks so much, Edwin and Steve. So great to see you.
Thank you.
Shelly, I read that you've had a pandemic of love.
Yes. Well, it wasn't my pandemic of love. It was actually something that was co-created by millions of people around the world and is still quite active, actually. And what it is it's a global grassroots volunteer-led mutual aid organization that has directly transacted over $61 million and has directly connected over 2 million people, meaning that we're not a nonprofit, we're actually a nonprofit disruptor. And what that means is that we kind of remove the middleman, if you will, the middle organization, rather than taking funds and then redistributing them. What we do is we allow people to redistribute wealth. And wealth is very loosely defined here directly. So if somebody needs their utility bill paid and somebody wants to pay their utility bill, we just connect them directly. They have to have a conversation. They have to connect on a human level, and then that need gets taken care of. So it's a really beautiful way to connect, to make people feel seen and heard, especially at a time of disconnection in this world.
That's really a beautiful thing. And then I read also, and then I'm going to be quiet, that you're one of the 12 most powerful women in the world or something like that.
Oh my God, that is so off base, actually.
Sorry.
No, hardly. I was named as one of the 12 most powerful mindfulness instructors, women mindfulness instructors by mindful.org several years back. So, which was really an amazing honor, very humbling company to be in. But yeah, a little bit different than being the most powerful Jeff Bezos type. That sounds like I'm building an evil empire, and I'm actually trying to build an empire of love. So totally on the other end of the spectrum.
Well, maybe you could figure out how to distribute it like he distributes stuff.
Yeah, that would be pretty amazing to use that process to make sure that everybody in this world has enough.
Yeah.
I read yesterday, interestingly, that his ex-wife has already given away more money in the past year than Mr. Bezos has given away in his entire lifetime. So after the divorce settlement, she's done a much better job of distributing wealth than he's ever done in his life. So there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Stephen, why don't you talk about the book?
Well, I want to hear about the book, Shelly, and I want to hear about. I love the title, "Sit Down to Rise Up." And so, who's your target audience?
No, definitely.
And who's your target audience, and what's your main message for them?
Sorry, my target audience is everyone, really. Anybody that should be engaging in self-care, and that really is everybody. Everybody should understand that the best version of the world has to start with the best version of us. And we are all a part of a community. We're all interdependent, right? And for anybody who thinks that they're not is so wrong and so off base. So the reality is that we have to be able to take care of ourselves, know how to do it consistently and deliberately, and not feel like it's, selfish or self-indulgent in any way. And there's a roadmap for that. There's a way that we can consistently show up for ourselves so that we can show up for others more fully and be more present, whether it's work or at home or just, in the world at large.
Shelly, I read about, and in your book, you mentioned some chronic health issues that led you on the journey that, basically led you to writing the book and everything you're doing.
Yeah.
And so you come from a very authentic place. Can you tell us, share with the audience a little bit about that journey and what you discovered along the way?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking that. It definitely takes a lot of vulnerability. And my hope is that it encourages other people to share in an authentic way too, to recognize that they are not alone with their struggles. I was 27 years old. I had a toddler. My son was a toddler at the time. Was in the middle of a divorce, which is never fun. Even if it's amicable, it's painful. It's very painful, especially when you have children. And I was, just going through a lot of stress, not at all taking care of myself in any way, working full time and just struggling. And I woke up one morning and I couldn't see. Literally, I was blind. I woke up, opened my eyes, and had to blink several times to make sure that it wasn't still dark outside, but actually that I just could not see. And you can imagine how frightening that is, because you don't know if you're ever going to see again. And at that moment, I was home alone with my son, and I had to get him ready for school. And now I'm thinking, how in God's name am I going to even get him to school, get him dressed, deal with this? And fortunately, back in that day, phones actually had those buttons that were depressed. So you could actually, you could feel around and actually dial a number. And you also remembered phone numbers. I was thinking, God, what if that would have happened in these times? How would I have reached out? I reached out to a friend of mine who immediately came over and was able to, help me get my son dressed, get him to school, and get me to an ophthalmologist. And the ophthalmologists confirmed that I had a disease called uveitis. And essentially what uveitis is it's an autoimmune condition. Your brain is telling your eyes there's an infection there that isn't there. And so the brain just naturally sends white blood cells into the eyes to help, clear the infection. But what often happens is that so many white blood cells start to gather up and they become engorged, and eventually they cannot find their way out, and they start to burst the capillaries in the back of your eye as well. So that essentially was what was happening for months in my eyes. And it wasn't until I woke up that morning and realized, what was happening. And so the doctor, the first ophthalmologist that I saw, confirmed this diagnosis for me and told me that I had to go to another specialist, but also said to me that I would likely be blind by the time that I was 40. That uveitis is the leading cause of blindness in people under the age of 40 in this country. And when somebody gives you a prognosis like that, when somebody says something like that to you, there's it's almost like you're turning over an hourglass with sand, right? You feel like, wait a minute. So, okay, 40, I've got 13 years, and you start to see life, and no pun intended, but you start to see life in a very different light. And in the book, I use one of my favorite quotes from the late great poet and Nobel laureate, actually, Mary Oliver. Mary Oliver wrote that once I was given a box of darkness, and it took me years to understand that it too was a gift. And the reality for me is that, that diagnosis was a gift for me in many ways, because it allowed me to recognize that that time is not something that is guaranteed, that my eyesight is not something to be taken for granted, that there is so much beauty in the world that we don't see on a daily basis, but that's right in front of us. And it really really kind of heightened my sense of appreciation for the little things, and to recognize that that I really need to be present every single day and put myself in the line of beauty as often as possible.
And that you have no control.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Very motivational story. I almost thought I would have seen that in one of the episodes of House. You know, you saw the TV series House, where he was always
I love that show.
diagnosing strange things that happen to people. Well, I'm glad. Are you fully recovered now, or is it something you're still dealing with?
No, I actually am going to, unless there's a cure at some point, I'll be dealing with it for the rest of my life. But I am in my mid 40s now, and I'm happy to say that I still have vision in my right eye. I no longer have vision in my left eye, so I do have vision impairment, as it's called, but I don't see it as an impairment. I actually, as I said, can see it also as a superpower in a way, right? It's a reminder that I need to get to it, and I can't let anything hold me back.
You had a very motivational chapter in the book about circles of influence. And did that help you through your journey? And how are you recommending people use circles of influence to take care of their own self-care?
Yeah, well, so, the circles of influence, actually, if we kind of dial it back, comes from a term called communities of care. And what I, write about in the book, and what I teach in workshops all over the country and to organizations, is the fact that self-care is really not just about the self. It's obviously very misleading, because the word self is in there, so it implies individualism, which I know is something that, as a just Western society, where we hold steadfast to that kind of individualistic nature. However, we are all interdependent, and we all need each other. Not one of us on this call today, not one of us in the world has gotten to where we've gotten without the help of other people. And so, basically what a community of care is a new term for self-care. It's the realization that if we all create formalized self-care plans, share them with each other in self-care communities, or communities of care that are formalized, that we can create beautiful forms of equity, redistribution of wealth again. And I'll say that wealth, I don't define wealth as a socioeconomic value. I look at wealth as so many different things. Some of us suffer from time poverty. Some of us have data poverty. Some of us don't have energy, et cetera, et cetera. And so every single human being in our communities of care, regardless of their socioeconomic status, has something that they can offer in this world. And every single person has something that they need. And so if we could just sort of be vulnerable enough to make it safe to ask for help, or to tell people what it is that we need and what it is that we can offer, there's such a beautiful symbiotic ecosystem that can be developed from that.
Wow, that is great. Whew.
Wonderful. Have you seen it implemented anywhere, or particularly in organizations? I'm thinking business organizations.
Yeah, well, so obviously Pandemic of Love has shown that mutual aid and the concept of communities of care can be replicable, exportable, and scalable. And we have actually worked with different organizations, Fortune 500 and also Inc. 5000 companies, where I've been able to go in and teach how to create formalized self-care plans, and how to create these sort of micro pods, if you will, or micro communities of care within organizations that then create that ripple effect, which speaks to your original question, Stephen, about, ripples of influence. Or, we talk in business a lot about ROI, right? About a return on investment. And my, I guess my plea to organizations is that we should also look at ROIs as ripples of influence. And how do we create these ripples of influence within an organization as it pertains to self-care to make sure that, especially in these times where so many people are facing hardships, right? Whether it's health hardships or, balancing things or supply chain shortages or people in the workplace, there's so much shortage of people. People are just being overworked, the ones who show up to work, actually, right? Because there's fewer bodies to get the work done. And so if we can make it a safe space for employees to be able to say, this is what I need, this is what I'm struggling with. And I guarantee you that there are people in the organization that can assist with that.
Stephen, the word ripples of influence, ROI. When you hear that word, what do you think?
Oh, it ripples. You toss the rock into a pond, and it just they get bigger and bigger as it expands. And I think that is a wonderful phrase, and that's what influence would be. If you influence two people, and two people influence two people, or four people, and then four influence eight, and it keeps doubling. Is a wonderful analogy there, quite frankly.
So, Stephen, what do you think of this real? I can't talk. Ripples of influence relevant to work from anywhere, and relating to staff without them being there.
I think it's extremely important because you don't have to have physical contact to influence everybody, particularly as a leader. If you're actually leading people and not managing them, you've heard me say many times, you don't manage people, you manage things, processes, and procedures. You lead people. And one of the things that, what Shelly's talking about is I've read some research a couple months ago, I think it was from Gallup. In the workplace, 42% of women are uncomfortable discussing burnout with their immediate boss. It didn't matter the gender of their boss.
Yeah.
The society looks at it as a kind of a weakness. And something I think it was 30 or 32% of men felt the same way. So even with men, if 1/3 of your workforce, up to 40% of your workforce is uncomfortable talking to their immediate supervisor about burnout, and yet other research shows that anywhere from 70 to 90% of all workers have experienced burnout in the last year. Well, we've got a big mess happening out there.
There's a total disconnect.
Disconnect. We need some ripples of influence.
A freeze up.
Yeah.
If you will.
So. Yeah. No, absolutely. And there's so many great organizations that are working to normalize speaking about it, normalize asking for help and having real time as well, like off. Part of, our culture here in this country in particular, in the United States, is that there's that busyness culture of like, you always have to be on 24/7. And that's what's been normalized for so long, that our bosses can reach out to us at all hours of the day and on the weekend and after hours. And we feel like we have to respond right away. Whereas, as you see in other countries now, they're actually passing laws to make it illegal for your boss to contact you after hours, And I think I just read that the UK is actually they're piloting for the next 90 days a 4-day work week. And that the research coming out of that will be really interesting in the next year to see how that works and if that trend will take here in this country.
So maybe I can ask you a question here, a little bit off the wall here, but you've been on TV shows, interviews, you've done podcast things. What have you learned from that experience? And I asked because we're doing it here. But,
yeah.
But a lot of the audience out there is corporate employees and
yes.
And business executives of service providers, whether it's lawyers or accountants or basket makers, but they're trying to sell into the Fortune 500. So,
correct.
What do you take away from being media present?
Yeah. That's a really interesting question because it actually comes on the heels of the fact that I personally was in the corporate world for 20 years, rose up the corporate ladder, led an organization before I left 5.5 years ago to follow my passion, which is, teaching mindfulness and being philanthropic. But I ran an organization with 2,400 employees in 14 markets. And what I could tell you, from both of those experiences is that people in corporations, leaders, managers, don't have the tools, or they don't obtain the tools to set the premise and set the sort of stage to have these difficult conversations, because it requires for us to lean into compassion, into empathy, a lot of things that people like Brene Brown write about, right? Vulnerability. And when we think about leadership, we automatically think of, we've got to be strong and we have to be stoic and we can't show our vulnerabilities because that is seen as a weakness. And so what I've seen from the audiences and our discussions that I've had, especially over the last few months as the book has come out, is that it's sort of a revelation for people when you give them a template, a pen and a paper, something that I think managers and leaders understand. And you say, here is the process, here is the path, here's a template that you can use and then share with other people in your organization that sets the stage for you to be able to have a real conversation about your self-care needs and what it is that you need to be able to reach a true balance, or at least not fall into a place of burnout, right? Which is very hard to come back from quickly. It's not about taking a weekend off and then, I'm no longer, in a burnout stage. Burnout can be something that, and actually the World Health Organization has now officially define burnout as a condition, as a medical condition. So that's saying a lot, for them to be assigning an actual medical terminology and telling us that it's something that needs to be tended to and is not easy to bounce back from.
And it's also something that doesn't happen overnight. That's when I coach leaders now, one of the things I'm talking about a lot is that just recognize the signs of burnout, because it's not like somebody wakes up on Thursday morning and, I'm burned out. It's been building for weeks and weeks and weeks. And then suddenly, they do tip over the edge there. And it's very difficult for them to, as you say, to come back from, without a doubt.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I love your approach, because the leaders I talk with a lot, one of the reasons leaders don't like talking about empathy and compassion and resiliency and adaptability and burnout is no one's taught them how to have those conversations. They're not trained for those conversations. That's why, when I ask people, what do you do? Well, the answer is, I try and send them to HR. Well, there may be a few people in HR who have some experience that, but even the HR people are not well trained in this. So I loved your approach of really making organizations realize that they have to teach these skills to their leaders in order to cascade it down into the front line.
Yeah, well, I think, Stephen, where we can start with that is really, let's take it out of the workplace for a minute. And we can all remember a time when we were younger and people would ask us all the time, what do you want to be when you grow up? And that particular question in general needs to be retired. What do you want to be when you grow up should be replaced with the question of, who do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah.
Right? I want to be a compassionate person, a person that helps people.
I
want to be, a person who is kind, a person that just serves my purpose or has a mission or a vision, et cetera. And so it really changes the conversation. And I think that it could start there. It could start when we see people asking our children or our grandchildren now those questions. We could stop them and say, let's reframe. And so I think that it's really, up to us to just, again, it's a ripple of influence. It takes one leader within an organization. And I've seen it happen time and again. One leader who can stand up, be bold and courageous and brave enough and say, this is what I've experienced and this is what I'm experiencing. And I want to hear from you. And this is a safe space for us to have that discussion. And that's all it takes is one person, one pebble in the pond to create a ripple that eventually could become a tsunami.
So I want to jump in if I may, and if you don't like this, just redirect me, okay? But about your eye condition.
Yeah.
So has your good eye compensated? Has it become stronger? Has your vision improved in that?
Yeah, it's so interesting. So, I'm in Lake Tahoe now, as I mentioned, and I love to snowboard and I love to do board sports in general. And when I first experienced this 2.5 years ago, the vision loss, I was so worried that I would not be able to snowboard or really do any of the sports or recreation that I enjoy doing, because when you lose, whether it's hearing or vision or what have you, you sort of also lose your footing and equilibrium. Like things, even driving, right, was completely different for me, because you're used to looking out of your left eye and looking at the mirror, and suddenly you have to like kind of redirect and rehabituate so that you turn your head instead to look, right? Or you use the mirror, the rear view mirror instead. And so, yeah, absolutely. The brain is an amazing, amazing organ. The brain, what I've noticed is, and I've really taken note, as a mindfulness teacher, I've been able to be really self-aware of how the brain has, and the right eye has overcompensated for the left eye, and how I've been able to get back on a snowboard, and I've been able to just live my life and do everything that I was doing before, with few modifications, of course. But it's been incredible to be able to see how resilient the human body, the brain is, how magnificent it is, and it's really just a testament to the marvel, to the miracles that we are.
Thank you.
Nice. Very nice. I'm just astounded by your story. I just love your story, and I love your resilience, and it just comes through. Mindfulness. So you, as your practices in mindfulness, as you teach mindfulness, how are you finding receptive mindfulness practices again in the workplace? Because really our audience.
Yeah, sure.
I keep bringing back the workplace, but our audience, our leaders, and
yeah.
What have you. But and we had a gentleman from. Used to be at LinkedIn. He was the mindfulness leader at LinkedIn for a while. And so at least within that organization,
yes.
Steps. But how are you finding it?
Yeah, well, LinkedIn is definitely a leader in that, especially even as it pertains to compassion and empathy, and helping their leaders with their emotional quotient, their EQ. Such a great organization to look at and study if your organization is interested in sort of following that lead. What I can say is that I, have found, especially over the last decade, that more and more organizations are willing to have the conversation. No longer look at mindfulness as something that is sort of woo-woo and not scientific. I mean, there's thousands of studies that have been all over the world that have been backed by the National Institute of Health now, and there are so many companies that are adopting different types of wellness strategies in the workplace, right? Not just mindfulness, but other types of mindfulness strategies as well, and wellness strategies, because they see that that in doing so, that they are able to help with things. The bottom line, really, retention, presentism, presenteeism in the workplace, right? People show up very differently, and so they're adopting it, and I see that organizations are much more enthusiastic about learning more and about like trying it. What I will say is this, because I've noticed that, at the beginning when I started to teach mindfulness in organizations, companies would say, well, can you come in and teach for like 30 minutes a week? Or can we do this once a week? And, I would have to really like work to open that door. It was like a little sliver of the door was cracked. And I would say, sure, absolutely, I'll come in and do that. And what I would do once I was in there is kind of like, just widen that door slowly, to just give the leaders an opportunity to understand that that the 30 minutes a week, of mindfulness practice doesn't shift culture, doesn't create a paradigm shift within an organization. It doesn't set the stage for that community of care and that safe space that we discussed, right? But what it does is it just gives people temporary relief. And what we need to do is actually move from wanting our employees to be resilient to having and giving them and providing them the tools for pre-resilience and pre-recovery, which are two terms that Dr. Amishi Jha from the University of Miami Center for Mindfulness has come up with, and I love them. They're so brilliant. Pre-resilience and pre-recovery. We don't want to just talk about the bounce back ability of an employee. We want to make sure that they don't have to bounce back in the first place and that they have the tools in their toolbox to be able to do that. So just like we are expecting them to know how to use Excel and to know how to use Word and to know how to use Slack and whatever other amazing tools we're providing them with, we need to make sure that we provide them with the tools to be able to pause, to stop, to understand the signals that their body is giving them when they are in a red zone, need to be in high alert and they're teetering on burnout.
We are pleased to welcome Adamo Education as a proud sponsor of Global TV Talk Show.
The concept of a microschool is the reimagining of the one-room schoolhouse. My name is Tamara Becker. I'm the president and CEO of Adamo Education. The microschool concept really does not just lend itself to the personalization and the customization of learning, but also the social development and fostering that sense of love for learning. Unlike what we see in traditional brick and mortar schools, we have multiple grade levels in the same learning space. Students can be enriched by the socialization that they get, as well as the academic support from peers. What differentiates Adamo is the fact that we are taking the best pieces of brick and mortar, of digital, and then at-home learning. Students here can come 5 days a week. They can come 4 hours a day. It will really just depend on what is best for the student and for the parent. To enroll, just reach out via phone, text, or email, and we'll have that personalized conversation, and we'll be able to get you all set. Check us out at adamoeducation.org.
Hi, this is Ed, and I thank you for tuning in to Global TV Talk Show, a unit on globalbusinessnews.net. We broadcast to the world, as you know by now. So I wanted to make sure that you understand that our programs are advertising supported. We're grateful for co-sponsors, advertisers. They have a marketing budget coupled with a strong desire to be associated with our top quality program. And of course, I'm grateful. Thank you. So for the next few minutes, you're going to see some commercials. It's mostly very low key, and our prices are very, very reasonable. Our exposure for the advertisers go 12 months and beyond. Some of our advertisers have been with us since March, April of 2020. And Google Analytics has tracked over 125,000 what they call audience page views, which means you looking at this page, that's a page view. Now, if you happen to go to one of our other shows or to our radio broadcasts or to our newspaper or magazine, those become additional page views as measured by Google Analytics. And so when they say 125,000 since spring of 2020 up through Labor Day, a month ago, that's pretty good numbers. And the past 30 days, Google Analytics has measured just under 6,000 audience page views. And that, according to them, is a 42% increase in audience participation over the month of August. So thank you very much. Well, here's our advertisers, and we'll be back in just a couple of minutes or so and we'll proceed with this interesting conversation. Thank you.
This episode from the meeting room of Global TV Talk Show is brought to you by
The Bridge School, the accredited international online private school of choice, at bridgek12.org.
Porch Light Rental and Destination Services. Reduce your renter lump sum or managed relocation costs. Visit them at porchlightrental.com.
And by airs.com. With our full range of services, we can help design and manage your international relocation. Find us at airs.com.
Primestone Partners, featuring corporate, government, and developer housing solutions, as well as senior-level advisory services. Find them at primestonepartners.com.
And by International Auto Source. We are the vehicle experts for expats, featuring all major brands of automobiles with flexible solutions and financing. On the web at intlauto.com.
Become a global player in your field.
Cross Culture to Go provides virtual support for your global business and career success.
We can help you thrive in 140 plus countries and markets.
On the web at crossculturetogo.com.
Something that's really neat is that the Bridge School partners with various organizations to provide learning for their students. For example, we partner with a major ballet company, and we are able to enroll several of their students into our school. So now not only is the student able to participate in a school and have a seamless transition while they're very active in their ballet career, but now they have other dancers that are with them that are doing some of the same courses. So it's almost becoming a camaraderie where they're taking similar courses, they're working together on their ballet, and really being able to form this great partnership with these organizations to provide a needed service. A lot of times there are student athletes who will spend hours and hours at the gym or at the basketball courts, wherever it is. And if they're attending a traditional school, they're in school from 8 to 3. They get a quick snack, and then they're at the gym for 3 to 4 hours in the evening. Coming to us and having that partnership, they're able to break that up throughout the day. They can have a morning practice, get some schooling in, have an afternoon practice, finish their schooling in the evening. So there's that flexibility. And additionally, if there are tournaments or performances, it's fantastic because if there's a week where they have shows straight through, they can take that week off of learning and then pick back up when they're done. So it offers this great flexibility. And for the program owners of these sports leagues, it is a win-win situation for them because they see this need. They see this need that their students need to make sure that they are obtaining the grades necessary to be successful adults in our country and in other countries. But it provides them an environment where they can be successful at both.
Hi, I'm Sergey Gorbatov.
I'm Angela Lane.
Together we are researchers, writers and practitioners in the field of human resources.
And we've also been multi-country, multi-assignment career expats.
We owe our professional development and growth to a very large extent to the international assignment opportunities that we have had.
But in a world where distributed work may become the norm, we also want to understand what happened to the nature, duration, and purpose of international assignments.
Together with our colleague, Julian Dalzell from the University of South Carolina, we're undertaking a study on the future of expatriation.
And we'd value your contribution. You can participate in this important study by completing a simple 10-minute questionnaire.
Access the questionnaire by typing in your browser tinyurl.com/expert study. That's tinyurl.com/expert study. You can also find the link here on Ed's website next to this video.
thank you for joining us in this study. In return for your contribution, we'll provide you with a copy of our research.
And of course, you'll be invited to an exclusive webinar hosted by Ed, where we will share our findings right here on Global Business News.
And so please go to tinyurl.com/expat study. Take the survey so that we can better understand the future of expatriation.
So let me jump in and ask you again to zero in on a couple of things you just said for well, not just me, but through me to the audience out there.
Sure.
Pre-recovery and pre-resilience.
Yeah.
I think it's best to simply define those again.
Yeah, sure. So let's think about pre-recovery and pre-resilience as a bank account, right? If we have formalized self-care plans that we commit to on a daily basis, right? And it's micro habits, micro practices, things like that we inherently know, and that we read articles about all the time, right? Like drinking enough water every day, making sure that we, eat square meals a day of healthy food, that we get up and walk around, that we're not just, sitting at our computer, or even standing if you have a standing desk, which is better than sitting, but moving around, right? Getting enough sleep, et cetera, et cetera. All these things that we know are good for us, that really our mother used to tell us to turn the lights off when we were teenagers, and we'd be like, oh, mom, now we're policing ourselves, right? So all of these things that are unsexy, but really make up the self-care wheel, if we look at that. And so what that is if we as employers expect that from our employees and remind them to do this for themselves and give them the time even during the workday, right, to do this, and respect their time when they're off, to make sure that they're tending to themselves and that they actually have time to recover and reset, then what we're doing is we're giving them and we are depositing into that self-care bank account, that pre-recovery, that pre-resilience bank account, so that when we are in the mode of, oh my gosh, we have this huge pitch coming up and we have to work double overtime, right, to get this thing done, or we're rebranding a company, or we're in the middle of a merger, et cetera, when you need to have that extra oomph, you actually have the gas in the tank or the money in the bank to do it. That's what pre-recovery and pre-resilience is. And then you can go back to putting the assets back into that bank account for a rainy day.
Brilliant.
How do you handle an employee who doesn't want to do that? I'm a type A personality. I want to work 16 hours a day, or you know what? I'm just a lazy person. I want to sit on my couch. I don't care about my weight.
Yeah.
That's just my lifestyle. How do we take what you're talking about and bring it in, whether it's in the workplace or in society, without shaming and blaming those who don't want to participate in this?
Yeah, well, it's really about culture of an organization. Some people may be late adopters, but what I can tell you is that if the culture of an organization, and there's one of the largest organizations in the world is doing this really well right now with the help of Thrive Global, right, which was founded by Ariana Huffington, is Walmart. Walmart is doing these incredible things with Thrive Global called Thrive Challenges. And they're amazing. Organizations should really be looking to that model. They're motivating employees. They're also rewarding them with monetary rewards to create walking groups, and to work out, to get off the couch, to buy into the culture that they're trying to create, to make sure that their employees are healthier, that they are, losing the weight, bringing down their blood pressure, that they are reversing the pre-diabetes, that they're experiencing. Because Walmart understands from a monetary perspective that this is costing them millions upon millions upon millions of dollars every year. And what they're realizing is that, yes, not only is it helping their bottom line, not as only is it helping, obviously their cost of health insurance on an annual basis, but it's actually creating happier employees that want to come to work, that are more productive, and that are that are bought into this new culture that is being created store by store around the country, department by department. So that's a really great model to start looking at.
Great.
And I don't know about Walmart's situation. I do know here in Mexico, a construction company did something similar. And the spinoff from it was the employees took it back into their homes and in their communities. And so in this fairly small, smaller type city where this construction company is located, suddenly wellness became part of the community. And so
nice.
The spinoff effect was really nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe,
totally.
maybe Ed, we can rally America around wellness and mental health or mental well-being, I should say, and maybe that'll help us reduce some of the divisiveness in our societies and in our corporations.
Why don't we do that on Feb 1 in that program? So,
yeah,
Shelly, what are you doing on Feb 1? I have a global global telecast that I've named, and this is number 5 in the series. Global voice, become in small letters, and then big letters, global voice, and then smaller letters, the number 4, change. So become a global voice for change, and whatever the heck that means. All right, so I'm inviting people like Stephen and others to come and talk about their book or their brand and how they've changed as a result of the pandemic, or how the company is changing.
Yeah.
And what are they doing in the community to bring about togetherness or greater understanding, whatever. And so
yeah, no, that's great. Amazing.
I already have 16 speakers on February 1, and including a nest of people, what I call a nest of people in India.
Nice.
And so it's 7 a.m. in California. It'll be 8:30 p.m. same day on Feb 1. And they're willing to do this.
That's amazing. That's really great.
That's really cool.
Should be a great show.
It is really cool.
Should be a great show. Before we run out of time, Shelly, tell our audience how to reach you, about where to get the book.
Sure.
And do you have the book you can hold up to the camera?
I do. Hold on a second. Let me grab it. It's right here.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. It's probably going to be backwards though, but here it is.
No, it's there you go. It's right there. Just hold it there. Yeah, right there.
Yeah, looks fine. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So sit down to rise up. Sit down to rise up, and the subtitle is How Radical Self-Care Can Change the World. And so the book can be purchased on Amazon. It can be purchased from your local booksellers through bookshop.org at all major retailers like Target or Barnes & Nobles. And then it can also be found on your Kindle or any e-reader that you use. And I actually recorded the book, and you can download it on Audible if you prefer to listen to it. It was actually chosen as one of the next Big Idea Book Club selections for fall of last year. Which is a really cool business leadership book club that was started by Malcolm Gladwell and by Adam Grant and a few of the other New York Times bestselling authors that are really changing and shaping and redefining what leadership means in the workplace, especially. People can find me at shellytegelski.com, which is very hard to spell, I understand. So if they just Google Shelly, Shelly, and then the first 3 letters of my last name, which is TYG, it will come up, I promise.
So
It'll come up.
Right here on the screen, your name is spelled out right here.
Yeah.
There
you go.
So that'll be easy for people to find. And so thank you.
Definitely.
I welcome you to come back on one of our broadcasts someday.
Yeah, definitely. I was really enjoyed our conversation, and I'm very inspired and enthusiastic about helping just create shifts within our workplace culture.
Beautiful. Well, our goal is to have an engaging conversation, and I think we certainly achieved that today. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I don't want it to end, but they have to get ready for the next show. So thank you, Stephen, for organizing this. Shelly, nice to meet you. It's a wonderful story. And
you as well. Thank you for your patience with my technical difficulties.
Well, part of the media training is don't get screwy because of this stuff, deal with it, and rise up.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
rise up. Hello.
There you go.
Okay. Well, this is Ed in Seaport Village, San Diego, and Stephen in Mexico City. Shelly in beautiful Lake Tahoe. Wonderful. Go out for a walk.
See you later.
Okay. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us in the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show.
Have a wonderful day, and stay safe.